Yeah, so our turnaround time is 6 days from the receipt of the dosimeters. We do understand how important it is for us to provide the results to the client as early as possible because, as you guys know, we are working in a very regulated industry, and our clients do have a lot of requirements in reporting on time. And in addition to that, make sure that everybody gets their dose information as quick as possible.
Also, it's been a passion of mine since I started my career. Quick results to the field is very important for the workers to know exactly how much radiation exposure they're getting. Uh, any amount of delay can affect the next readings because there's timing in when the dosimeter is handed out, what work activities they're doing. So to me, that's one of the most important things that an operations team can do is provide the dose results as quick as possible and also provide the dosimeter in a timely manner.
Yeah.
It's one thing to have a dosimeter that's exceptional in reporting and things, but if you can't get it to the client, it doesn't matter. So get it to the client in a timely manner.
And just imagine also a different angle would be like people that usually get high exposures, they are on monthly frequency, right? So if we are late in processing these dosimeters, it takes quite a bit for the dosimeters to arrive here. And then if we are late in reporting these dosimeters, you can be 2 weeks, 3 weeks into the next month already, and you do not know what the doses are, what the dose is for the previous month. So it's very, very important.
It's really critical when you think about it because if any delay, you're about a half a month in. If it's 15 days, you're already a half a month into the next month. You could already be over the limit and you wouldn't even know it. So that's very important to have the laboratory running at a very efficient clip.
Unfortunately, these type of things happen. What I would say that we do better than our competitors is to provide the missing dosimeters for a specific wear date. We do provide this information on the dose report. So the time when we send the information out, the dose report out, the dosimeters from the same wear period that they have not arrived at RDC, they are identified such that the client can take the right action and resolve the situation. For the damaged dosimeter, similarly, we capture a lot of notes. Okay, take that one.
What you're talking about is something that a lot of folks charge for. It's an upgrade to the service, but we just provide it to our clients. We feel it's so important that they understand the lost dosimeter and that they understand that it's missing, that they need to get that dose result back in, or if it's damaged, we provide that result. But something that we've worked really hard on recently is a program that estimates the dose for a person, and it's within our Insights product that we've been building. And that's going to be cutting edge, new functionality for people, RSOs, to have a quick estimate of the dose, plug those holes in the records for a lost dosimeter. I mean, a worker can do everything they need to do, but if we lose the badge, and that's very rare. It's a rare occurrence here. Unlike some other places that I've been, it's hard in a laboratory. A lot of times things get lost, but worker does everything they're supposed to do, wear that dosimeter, and all of a sudden the laboratory loses it. That's one of the biggest problems that we need to solve, and we've done a lot around that to not make that happen. But if it gets damaged, if it's damaged in the field or something, we have ways to help that RSO come up with another dose.
One other thing I would say, so estimates is a lagging indicator, right, for the dose of the worker. So the event already occurred, and you just need to fill the record up such that the RSO and everybody is up to speed, up to date with their records. But I would say that we do in Insight, which is cutting edge and very different than anybody else in the industry. We communicate which dosimeters are late before they are truly late. And what that does is informs the RSO or whoever is responsible for collecting these dosimeters that they need to collect them. They have some to collect, and there are some people that need to return their dosimeter. And not only that, but each person has their own unreturned scores in Insight.
Yeah, which is really helpful for the RSO to know those. I don't want to say it, the repeat offenders.
Or frequent flyers.
There's always a group of folks that maybe you might know people that misplace things in your family.
No, I have nobody in my family that does that.
There's always workers that seem to have a little more challenge in locating their dosimeters or leaving them at home and having to get another dosimeter to do their job that day. So it's very important for the RSO to know those folks and try to help counsel and correct that behavior. Well, we head to the laboratory and talk a little bit about lower limited detection.
So one of the main characteristics of the dosimeters is the lower limit of detection, and this usually reflects on how low it can report a dose result accurately. Now, we do have here multiple technologies. We do have the TLD and OSL technology, and I'm sure you have a strong opinion about both of them.
Definitely. It's something that I've written a lot of papers on, given a lot of presentations on also. So there's a misconception in industry that OSL, a particular OSL dosimeter, is the only one that can achieve 1 millirem lower limited detection. We have shown in many cases that our dosimeter, our OSL detector is capable that and more than capable of outperforming other OSL dosimeters in the market. So our dosimeter is a beryllium oxide dosimeter, OSL dosimeter, and it can see well below 1 millirem in a 1 day period, but it can also achieve that over a month, which is really impressive. And the function of lower limited detection is a function of time. A lot of people, they'll do 1 day or 1 hour and say, oh, my LLD is less than 1. But you really have to do it over the wear period to understand what is the true lower limited detection of a system. And a lot of them break down when you get farther out because the background gets bigger. So you're trying to see a small signal on a large background, and we're able to separate that with our dosimetry, be it our beryllium oxide dosimeter or our TLD, which we'll show you, which is a lithium copper dose dosimeter. We can show you that here in the laboratory too.
Would you say that the lower limit of detection is dependent on the detector itself, but also the analytical system that is being used for analysis?
Correct. Depending on how much stimulation source you put in, that could be a laser that's firing a massive amount of energy in light into a flux of light into the sensor to drive that lower limit of detection. You're also going to get a lot of depletion with that. If you use an LED, you're going to get less because there's less intensity. So in our case, we use an LED in this scenario, and we're still able to drive that lower limit of detection down to 1. We don't have to deplete very much of the signal to get that. So we save the rereadability, whereas other technologies, you fire that laser, you deplete more than 30% of that reading when it's below about 200. When it's below about 200 millirem.
Correct.
Then you go back and reread it, and all you can really say, well, the depletion was kind of what we expect, so therefore we confirm the result. Well, you didn't confirm the result. All you did is confirm that you could reread the dosimeter, but you didn't reconfirm the dose and the reprocessing. You basically have almost annealed the dosimeter, and you're just validating that you got the same amount of output, or if you corrected it, but in a lot of cases they don't correct.
Correct. I would say also, so not only the LLD, but another factor when the radiation safety officers try to decide which dosimeter is best for their application. Another strong characteristic is associated with fade. And from that perspective, both our dosimeters have extremely low fade, like less than 3 to 4% per year. which why is that important? It because allows for very long wear periods, and very long wear periods, especially for the people that do not get necessarily too much dose. It reduces quite a bit the burden of the administrators of the hospital to pick up the dosimeters, return the exchange, and so on and so forth.
Whereas others might charge for a Form 5, where we allow people to go and generate a Form 5 and not charge them for it, where it could be a $5 charge for the other person. So that's another invoice. That's another line on the invoice that you have to validate. It takes a lot of time for an RSO. You want the RSO to be doing the job that they're best at, which is protecting the worker, saving saving dose for the worker, looking at their technique and making sure that they're performing their job appropriately. To have them burdened down with an administrative task of verifying that the charges are correct, which I can tell you, my recommendation is, from what I've seen, you want to go line by line, because a lot of those, when there's a lot of complexity in the fee, there's a lot of opportunity for error. And I can say that I've seen that myself in what I've experienced.
Yeah, I would say though, what we are doing here, it's a very simple way we organize the invoices and also the way we charge. So we have extremely few fees. One is related to the dosimeter itself. The other one is related to unreturned dosimeters, and more or less that's about it. Like, we don't charge for participant setup. We don't charge for files, for any other special reporting that we are doing for the client. We are not charging for those investigation. We are not, like, it's so many things, so much value that we add, and we do not charge for.
In industry, don't you think the stupidest charge? I'm sorry, the stupidest.
He said he was not going to do this.
No, the craziest charge that I've seen is, I'm going to charge you to set up a new participant,
yes,
and then I'm going to reap the benefits of it by shipping it to you later. So I get another wear period out of you, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I get another dosimeter. Like, if you're on a quarterly, basically I just charged you for 5 dosimeters in a year, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. It's a new person that needs to be monitored. Why penalize that company for growing? Yeah. And you're capturing that business anyway. Mm-hmm. So it's a crazy charge to me. I just don't understand that charge. Sorry, I'm ranting.
And I would add to this though, right? So what we do here, we help the client, or we meet the client where the needs are. Like, if the client is ready to do their own changes using my RadCare system, we do it for them, or they can totally do it. If they are not ready to do it, then we do it for them. But what I think it's extremely important is, even when they are doing it using the system, there is no charge or additional charge for just using the system.
Yeah, I think another aspect that we do too is we have price calculator on the website. So basically, you can go to our website, get a pretty good estimate of what it's going to cost you for your dosimetry service, based on, and if you have the old invoice from your other vendor, you can get a pretty good estimate of what it's going to cost to switch from one vendor to another. People will throw around the term TLD or lithium fluoride, and there's various models of lithium fluoride dosimeters. So there's a lithium fluoride detector that is older technology. I would say that goes back to the birth of dosimetry in probably almost maybe in the 40s, 50s is when the technology came around. I think it's called TLD 100. The TLD 100 is a lithium fluoride, and it's magnesium doped. And that dosimeter has poor, I shouldn't say poor, because you can do things to make it perform very well, but you have to do a lot of steps to treat it to perform at a high level. A lot of people don't want to take that time, so they'll For example, it's not used in whole body dosimetry now in the United States. All the processors, the commercial processors, I should say, there are people that use this technology that are not commercial processors, but all the commercial processors use something called lithium fluoride copper dope dosimeter, which came out in about 99 time frame, 95 time frame. I can figure that out for real, but it's in that time frame, much later than aluminum oxide, and it was the answer to aluminum oxide. A lot of the pressure that was put on TLD. So TLD copper dope has a very exceptional lower limit of detection. It can go toe to toe with aluminum oxide over a year. The fade.
And also beryllium oxide OSL.
So same as the beryllium oxide, yeah, OSL. It also has great characteristics when it comes to fade. It'll stand toe to toe with aluminum oxide over a year, and even 2. We have data going out for 3 years, even with beryllium oxide. Also, the dosimeter has very good response. It's tissue equivalent. It's another reason that this dosimeter behaves much better. You don't need a lot of complex filtering for that dosimeter to perform very well in the field. And when you get a reading off of that detector, it's pretty close to the dose that you're going to see for the worker. Is there something I forgot, Mirela?
I don't think so. I think these are the main characteristics of this. Definitely the lower limit of detection and the fade for these cards. And I would say truly the differentiator, and where things are so much easier to establish a dose for a person, is the fact that the dosimeters, this dosimeter, the TLD dosimeter that we are working with, and the beryllium oxide are both tissue equivalent. This is an absolutely technical advantage compared to others.
For that part-time RSO or that RSO that maybe is not a radiation safety professional, in some of these smaller community hospitals, it might be the most technical person gets blessed that they're the RSO, and they have to basically administer the program. So we built things like insights to help them administer the program and help them through that process. Other ways that we help is our technical support teams. You can call and get advice. For example, somebody called the other day and said, do I have to monitor for carbon-14? My regulator says I have to, but it turns out that carbon-14 is not a concern in whole body external dosimetry. It's not powerful enough of a beta energy to penetrate the first layer of dead tissue to even get to the skin to cause a shallow dose. So monitoring is not required. Mirela, are there other ways?
I just heard you talk about the client support. So another situation that we got into recently, it was one of our clients that got a contaminated dosimeter. So what happened, they were working with Tech 99, and I think by accident they spilled on the dosimeter, and they shipped the dosimeter in, and the results were very, very high. By the time we got it, it was all decayed away, the contamination.
Very short half-life.
Yes, very short half-life, and but the results were very high. And of course, the RSO was extremely stressful.
Why would the result be high?
Because the contamination was still there.
So that contamination is like right on top of the detector.
Correct. Yeah.
Very short distance.
But you know what was interesting? Yeah, you know what's interesting about this dosimeter though? So it has 2 elements, right? One for shallow dose and one for deep dose. And the one that where the contamination occurred, it was very, very localized. It was on the deep dose element, and that was so much higher than the shallow dose element. So that helps us, because what we do when we...
That's a TL, or that's an OSL dosimeter impossibility.
Yes, it is, exactly. Because the radiation fields either give a pattern, a shallow dose or deep dose pattern that respond equally, or the shallow dose is higher than the deep dose element. So in this case, with having the deep dose higher than the shallow, it was really interesting. So we did write a letter to the client and hopefully is going to help him to decide if this is an occupational exposure or not.
I mean, that's a way that we help small clients, but also big clients, knowing how our dosimeter performs and knowing what's possible and what could have happened, and reconstructing those scenarios based on our knowledge of the dosimeter. RSOs don't have that information in a lot of cases, unless they're professionals in dosimetry at one point in their career. It's almost maybe a black box to them. And they're kind of surprised that our dosimeter is almost like spectrometers in the field. 4 detectors or 2 detectors, multiple data points that tell us a little story about how the person was exposed. And that way, when you have a client that maybe doesn't understand radiation safety principles or dosimetry, or maybe it's a part-time RSO that's, was maybe a technician in MRI that doesn't have radiation safety background, that's where we can come in and help. When they have these strange events, we can provide them, maybe even the scenario that it happened in.
I remember when we were working on identifying where or how the exposure occurred, and it was the strontium source was placed directly on the dosimeter. And when after we communicated the results, so it was our intuition based on what we knew, and I would call it educated guess, much better. And based on
how the dosimeter performed.
Yeah, so based on how we knew about the radiation field, about how the dosimeter performed, we were able to design the exact scenario that happened. And not only that, but in the end, after we provided this information to the client went and tried exactly the scenario that we were describing, and
we got the exact same result.
Yes.
We told them exactly how long to put the source on in contact with the dosimeter to replicate the exposure. We were within a couple seconds of the time. And also just knowing what the person had access to and what they could have done to intentionally irradiate their dosimeter was very helpful to us. So that small office, or that professional office, or that regional clinic, that's a hard problem to deal with. You got a person that shouldn't get, let's say, 1 gram a dose. How is it possible that it could occur? Is it being irradiated intentionally? Or did it fall off in the room? Or what are some of the scenarios? And viewing millions of dose results over our career, it's probably been billions and billions of dose results. But you see things in the data that others do not see.
All right.
Come on, Mirela, let's go for a walk. Your calves are probably going to be hurting later.